Since the beginning of the case, Kohberger's defense has maintained that there's no connection between him and the victims. Some members of the victims' families have a different opinion. Christy Goncalves, Kaylee's mother, had made it known that her and her husband had discovered that Kohberger had followed both Maddie and Kaylee on Instagram. When they cross-referenced his account with the profiles of the 4 victims, it showed that he had interacted with Maddie's Instagram posts.
It appeared to be the real Brian Kohberger account.
They scrolled through his followers and found that he had been following Maddie and Kaylee, as well as members of his family.
Would go to Maddie's Instagram account and look at her pictures, and he liked them. Brian's name was under a lot of Maddie's pictures, like that picture and that picture and that picture and that picture. So he was actively looking at the Instagram account.
Is there anything you've learned that connects Kohberger to any of the victims here? Last I talked to your dad, he said the family was looking for connections, but there wasn't anything really apparent at this point.
Yeah, I think we're still going to keep looking. I've had a lot of people reach out with Instagram posts or even a Spotify or lots of connections that they've been able to find. And those are super valuable. All of those go over to, the Moscow Police Department, as well as the Idaho State Police and the FBI, because nothing is insignificant at this point, and everything is being looked through.
There's one bad guy here that I have to focus on.
Do you know of any connections between Kaylee and any of the victims and this individual?
To me, it's like 9-10 miles. I'd be shocked if these guys did cross each other in grocery stores and just everyday life. If he was over there for a year, I'm assuming that he followed them and he may have figured out what their patterns are, and then, he tries to bump into them or he tries to hang out in those spots.
You don't think there's going to be some kind of connection that will explain this?
No, what kind would? My girl's bullying him, or, what kind of behavior could explain somebody being this brutal to another human being? He was probably obsessed with just their overall looks and their social media accounts and the fact that they were close.
Is there any evidence of a social media link, specifically Instagram, that connects Kohberger to 2 of the victims? When looking into potential forensic studies, I came across some information that was posted a year ago regarding Kohberger's online presence, which led me to a podcast by 2 experts trained in the field of computer forensics that I thought I'd share with you. The podcast, called The Hacker Mind, is hosted by Robert Vimosi, where he and Daniel Clemens, CEO of Shadow Dragon, discuss hacking real-world criminals online.
You need to have some creativity with it. You need to have the ability to think like a suspect and imagine their world. How does that play into Daniel's work?
Yeah, so open source intelligence, a lot of that for us is target centric, and what I mean by that is, I may have 1 or 2 things that I have a starting point on, where I want to enumerate breadcrumbs on somebody online. That could be an email address, a phone number, an alias, and then it could be a name, but usually that's not what you have. You're trying to get to a name or a location. And so usually when I'm looking at open source intelligence, an email address is going to tie to a Skype account. A Skype account is going to tie to an alias. An alias is going to tie to a Yelp account, and then the Yelp account, Yelp or food review sites or adult websites or anything where there's pleasure, and that could be likes or dislikes or anything like that on a social media platform. It opens up the opportunity that the person that usually put in those Yelp reviews is usually in a heightened state of emotion, of pleasure or rage, where operational security levels are much lower.
In InfoSec, we talk a lot about OPSEC, good and bad. Remember that when you're in a heightened state of emotion, either pleasure or rage, you're bound to have some bad operational security. You let your guard down. This is when criminals will tip their hand and reveal something of themselves online.
from my perspective, the value of open source intelligence in that vein is people are making assumptions, and assumptions are the mother of all mess ups. And that's where we adapt to that situation with open source intelligence and think, our strategy is, let's go find everything in the universe that fits a few different human nature patterns, because human nature won't change. And then someone's going to make the assumption, who's going to put together these 200 different sites in these little breadcrumbs? Well, we did, So it creates this very interesting, mosaic when you start looking at it by, hey, I'm going to pivot on an email address to an alias to a phone number, and every small piece of information that's on every single site. There's always something.
Daniel also mentioned a more recent case, an alleged murderer in Idaho.
The Idaho killer guy that was a few weeks ago, and I forget his name. It's okay that we don't know his name. I was able to find his Instagram account, and his Instagram account, he was following 2 of the victims. So that was interesting. And then the other interesting thing about him was most of the females he was following gave me insights into, he's living a very he objectifies women a great deal. Like, there's a lot of fantasy probably in his life, and probably not a lot of courage. So I would infer there's probably, an equal amount of rage, so that patternality, even though he had a very small footprint, that was very similar to the Vegas shooter. Because when we did find some of his hidden profiles, like he had a DeviantArt account, he was into child exploitation stuff, and some very strange, proclivities, I guess is the word. Enough to put him in the category of he's very pleasure seeking and very objectifying of everything around him. It's all for him. It's very narcissistic. And so I have seen that in a few different cases over time.
I don't know about you, but I'm completely fascinated by open source intelligence and how criminals are identified through the use of it. If you're interested to learn more about what Shadow Dragon does, please check out their website, as well as the Hacker Mind podcast, episode 70, Hacking Real-World Criminals Online. Thanks for joining me.